Hey everyone, thank you for joining in on another video. I really appreciate you all coming in and listening to these videos. It means so much. I first want to thank the follower on Instagram who recommended me doing this video. He did recommend it in my election night video, but I do appreciate those requests. That helps me out a lot on making videos for you all and ones that you all are interested in. So if you're not already following me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, make sure to go down in the description and follow me down there. I ask you all what kinds of videos you all want to see and things like that. It's just a great area to connect with me more, and we can talk one-on-one and things like that. Also, if you're interested in helping out behind the scenes or in the team at all, make sure to DM us. We're looking for extra help in certain areas, so if you're interested, we would love for you to have that. But let's go ahead and get into today's video. Today we're going to be talking about Governor Gavin Newsom and Governor Ron DeSantis. Both are current governors. Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida, and Gavin Newsom is the governor of California. You may remember Governor Gavin Newsom from 2021 when he faced a recall election in California. He ultimately defeated that, but he did face that recall election that was announced around May of 2021, sometime around that, and the recall election happened in September of 2021. You may remember that, you may not, but if you're interested in politics, you may certainly remember that recall election. Governor Ron DeSantis and Governor Gavin Newsom are up for re-election in 2020 or 2022 for their governor seats. And ultimately, I have them facing off in today's video for an election prediction for President of the United States. But let's first start by talking about characterizing states that I would view as pretty safe Democratic states in these races. Obviously, there's certain races that are going to be closer than others, and there's certain races that aren't going to be as close as others. But overall, this is just characterizing races that I believe would be pretty safe for Republicans and pretty safe for Democrats going into this election. So we're going to talk about it today, and we're going to talk about what races would really decide this race for both Governor Gavin Newsom and for Ron DeSantis. So, yeah, I appreciate you all again for joining in on today's video, and we're going to talk about certain races like Nevada, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and New Hampshire. These races would ultimately decide who becomes the next president of the United States. Now, pointing out in this video is that this would be an open race, right? There's no incumbent in this race. Joe Biden wouldn't be running for re-election, and Donald Trump also isn't running for re-election, but isn't as an incumbent either. So there's no incumbent in this race, which makes this race a little easier for the Republicans to pick up. As you know, an incumbent does not lose very frequently. I'm not saying it's impossible, but incumbents frequently do not lose. As you could see in my recent predictions, though, Donald Trump and others have won against Joe Biden because I believe that is possible. But I do want to point out that that isn't very likely. But in this video, we have an open primary season, and ultimately these two ended up being the nominees. And ultimately they're facing off with each other, and they don't have that incumbent factor, either of them. So this, in my opinion, would favor the Republicans going into this race. But that's enough talking about that. Let's go ahead and start talking about these certain states that would decide the presidency. Let's start with Ron DeSantis' home state of Florida, where if we look in recent years, this state has trended red. And Florida in 2016, the state of Florida went to Donald Trump by 1.2%, and in 2020 goes to Trump by 3.4%. Trending red, I think, would continue, and I think Ron DeSantis would win his home state of Florida pretty easily, considering also that it is his home state. Let's also talk about the state of Nevada, where in both 2016 and 2020, Clinton and Biden both won the state of Nevada by around 2.4%. So relatively the same type of margin in both 2016 and 2020. A lot of Republicans have thought that they could flip the state of Nevada. The last time that the state of Nevada did go red was back in 2004 with Bush. Bush won the state of Nevada by 2.6%. And a lot of Republicans since then have thought that they could flip the state over the years, but ultimately have failed. Now, Could Gavin Newsom win this state? Yes, I think he ultimately probably would win the state of Nevada. As you can see in other predictions, though, I have had certain Republicans winning against certain Democrats in the state of Nevada. These are unpopular Democrats. Gavin Newsom, I won't say he's the most popular guy on the planet, right? He's not a super popular Democrat, but he is someone who has expressed interest in running in 2024. While saying that he won't, we know how that goes with other people. Barack Obama and others also said that they wouldn't run for president, and we look at them as former presidents now. So talking about that, Nevada, I believe, would go blue. Given it's a West Coast state, I think Gavin Newsom would focus on the state of Nevada, and I think that trend would continue. One other thing I do want to talk about in today's video is, and I talk about this in every video because I think it's very important, is there's 3 important states that if they go red, Ron DeSantis could win. Give him North Carolina, Ohio, then have him win Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, which he's already favored to win Ohio and North Carolina as predicted, but give him the swing states that Biden won by less than a point, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. I'm sorry about that. He wins the presidency. Now, that's important because he doesn't have to focus on any other states besides those, even though he will, to win that race. So ultimately, he doesn't have to focus on Michigan. He doesn't have to focus on Pennsylvania. He can lose both of those states. Now, I don't think that would happen. I think something else would happen, but I want to point that out in today's video. Let's also talk about the state of Ohio. One that I already said that was trending red. As we see in 2020, Trump won the state of Ohio by 8 percentage points. He won it by 8.1 in 2016. A shocking win because Obama won the state by 3%. While that isn't a huge margin in 2012, he did win the state, and people thought Clinton would as well. But ultimately, no. Trump flips this state by so much. It's like not even funny. I mean, people were like, okay, Clinton's going to win, and ultimately Trump just went, psych, and he pulled out a massive win in the state of Ohio. And when that was announced, that was the first flipping coin sign towards a Trump presidency back on election night in 2016. So we see Trump wins the state of Ohio by 8.1%. Trump also wins it in 2020 by 8%. I think that will continue. I think Ron DeSantis would win the state of Ohio, and I think it's an important race that he would focus on quite a bit. Let's next talk about the state of New Hampshire, one that also Republicans have said that they could flip, ultimately have failed to do so. New Hampshire went to Biden by 7.4%, and back in 2016, only went to Clinton by 0.37%. I'm talking this state almost went red. Like, it was so close to going red, ultimately didn't. And we've seen in 2020 where Biden wins it by 7.4%. Now, in this race, I also think while it still would be closer than 2020, I think Gavin Newsom would win the state of New Hampshire. Let's next start talking about these states that ultimately decided Biden's win in 2020. Let's start by talking about the state of North Carolina, the last state that was called in the 2020 presidential race. Trump wins the state by 1.3%, and he won it by 3.7% back in 2016. So as we can see, it's trending more blue since 2016, but that also is semi-expected. The last time that North Carolina went blue was with Obama in 2008. He won it by 0.3%. We've seen in 2012 Mitt Romney flip it by 2%. He won the state by 2%. Trump wins it by 3.7%, and ultimately Trump wins it by 1.3%. While I think the race would be close, I think Governor Ron DeSantis would win the state of North Carolina, and I think that would not really be a super big shock, but also wouldn't be very favored for the Democrats, as the Democrats have been focusing on North Carolina. And I think that that's a strategy that the Democrats are going to start focusing on come in future elections, right? This blue wall that used to be here with Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania ultimately isn't fading, right? But we have seen in recent years these states get really much closer. And I think the Democrats, while still will focus on trying to win those, their new blue wall is going to be scattered all over the place. Maybe in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. I'm not 100% sure, but that is something to point out in this video. Let's next talk about the state of Georgia, where Biden won the state of Georgia by 0.2%, one of the closest margins. It actually was the closest margin in this race, in the 2020 presidential race. And Biden wins it by 0.2%. He wins Arizona by 0.3% and wins Wisconsin by 0.6%. And let's talk about Georgia and what would happen in 2020 or 2024 if DeSantis was the nominee for the Republicans. If we go back to 2016, Trump wins the state by 5.1%. 2012, Mitt Romney wins it by 7.8%, and McCain wins it by 5.2% back in 2008. Biden wins it by 0.23% in 2020. I think that the Republicans will win the state of Georgia. Based off of the current maps and things that we're seeing, Georgia seems to be a state that Republicans are going to continue to focus on. They're focusing on it with that 2022 Senate election and Herschel Walker winning that. He hasn't won it yet, but he's favored to win it by FiveThirtyEight and other polling sources at this point. They're focusing on it with Brian Kemp winning the governor's mansion. Again, he's most likely going to be reelected to Stacey Abrams. And I think that the Republicans are going to continue to focus on Georgia, and I think that they will ultimately win. I think also DeSantis specifically will focus on Georgia quite more than other candidates might, and I think that will help him win the state of Georgia in 2024. Let's next talk about the state of Arizona. 11 electoral votes, but 11 electoral votes that really matter. The state of Arizona only went to Biden by 0.3%. We've seen in 2016, Trump win it by 3.5%. We've seen in 2012, Romney win it by 9.1%. And we've seen in 2008 where McCain won it by 8.5%. So let's talk about the 2020 margin and how close it was and if Ron DeSantis could flip this state. Could he? Yes. Will he? Most likely. I think Ron DeSantis would win the state of Arizona. He's much more favored in Arizona than somebody like Trump, who might have a harder time picking up Arizona. We see currently where Kari Lake is trying to win the Republican nomination for Arizona governor. And ultimately, if she does, she's more favored than the Democratic soon-to-be Democratic nominee to win this race. Ultimately, I think that the Republicans will win the governor's mansion in Arizona, no matter the nominee, but I think the nominee will be Kari Lake. And I think that that's something to point out going into 2024, where Ron DeSantis would win the state of Arizona. Let's next talk about the state of Wisconsin. This red strategy that I said would matter, and Republicans can focus on these three states, not worry about Michigan and Pennsylvania. Now, they still will, but they don't have to, right? Biden won the state of Wisconsin by 0.6%. That's a very slim margin for Biden, and ultimately, I think that the Republicans will win it back in 2024. Based off polling, based off the current environment of the United States, Republicans are favored to win. Republicans will most likely win the presidency, and they most likely will win Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, the states that are going to matter to flip this presidential race. Let's next talk about the state of Michigan. Michigan is a state that Trump won by 0.22% in 2016. Trump won Wisconsin by 0.7%. Michigan was flipped in 2020. Biden wins it by 2.8%. Pennsylvania, Biden wins by 1.2%. Michigan is trending blue again, and Michigan, in most circumstances, would go blue. Gavin Newsom, I believe, would win the state of Michigan. And then the last state that we have to talk about is the state of Pennsylvania, a state that Biden focused on a lot in his campaign and paid off. He only won it by 1.2%, though. If we look back at 2016, Trump won it by 0.7%, almost same margin that he won Wisconsin. Can Pennsylvania go red in 2024? Yes. Will it? Most likely, in my opinion, at this point in the environment that we're looking at in the United States, Gavin Newsom would not be favored to win in the state of Pennsylvania. I think Ron DeSantis would win. I think this is the final map that we look at for a Ron DeSantis versus Gavin Newsom campaign, and I think Ron DeSantis would be elected the 47th president of the United States. Ron DeSantis is a fantastic candidate for Republicans to pick, and if they pick him in most circumstances of any Democrat he faces, he most likely would win. I thank you all again so much for watching another one of my election prediction videos. It means a lot. I know I'm filming a lot of these, but they're very interesting to look at who would win each state and by what kind of margin in 2024 if the race was against certain candidates. It's just fun to look at that, and we also will have more Senate and governor and House videos focused on the 2022 midterms coming up in the next few weeks. But again, I appreciate you all for watching. Make sure to go down below and subscribe and ring the bell. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, where you can stay up to date with everything American Elections has to offer. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.